if most of you don't know, Brian Fay and Courtney Fallon Rex, is that how you say your name?
That's correct.
Yeah. Are on the other end, and they're living in central Mexico. Why don't you go ahead and just tell a little bit about yourself? Both of you, take your time and share what you're doing.
You first.
Okay. I have a project down in Mexico called the Bosque Village. It's a permaculture farm and sustainability laboratory. So I've been thinking about how to make it survive. I started in 2004 and don't really want to run it as a tourist thing. I don't really want to even have to charge people who come here. I'd rather have them just come as this experiment and to investigate different ways of growing things, different sustainability and energy issues. And so one of the things I'm looking at is to do crowdfunding, which Courtney's currently doing. And yeah, so that's why I'm interested in this conversation.
Okay. And Courtney, what's your background? Go read my blog.
Yeah, I know. I used to tell people that, but I don't tell people that as much anymore. Really, I mean, there's just so much. But the gist of it is I spent the last 17 years in Seattle. And over time, I was realizing that I couldn't afford to continue living in Seattle. And then in May, I moved into a van and am indefinitely traveling now. Not sure how long I'm going to be traveling. And the way that I am going about that is through my Patreon campaign. So that's the really, really condensed, tiny version of it. But the reason I asked for us to do this BLAB together is because I'm very interested in product sponsorships, and I have zero experience doing that. So I have some experience garnering financial sponsorship, both for big projects, very specific things, as well as what I'm doing now. And I'd like to expand my ability to do that. Yeah. Like, I really want a solar cooker, and I don't want to have to pay for it because I'm documenting it everywhere, and I'm basically a living commercial. My whole life is a commercial. So you know, that's what I want.
I'm going to go ahead and post a link to her Patreon account, and Patreon is a subscription-based crowdfunding tool that she's using. So you can see the link there in the comments.
Good. And I know a lot of YouTube creators are also using Patreon, which is why I think my YouTube audience will be somewhat interested in what we're talking about, because I think it applies to a lot of the YouTube creators who do have a fairly functioning channel and growing. So, yeah, let's talk about product sponsorship for a minute. What's one of the questions that you have right now about product sponsorship that you'd like?
Yeah, one of my questions would be, you know, after you think of what products might be appropriate, how do you go about the initial contact with them? Do you do that via paper mail, or contact them online, or how do you do that?
Yeah, you will always find that, and I'm going to take a question from each of you about it, and then I want to make sure that I weave that into the whole story. So you will always find that you get a better reaction with less effort if you connect with them and if you find the right person within the company that handles that decision, that's always the best way to go. Email does elicit a response, but usually only if you get the answer that the best way to contact them is via email, and that's how they handle everything. Then sometimes it will elicit a response, but you can never roll your emotional. You can never give your emotional appeal via an email. I mean, you can, but it's hard. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it kind of does. I mean, I guess there's a couple options. One is snail mail, which, if I understood you correctly, that's your preferred way, right?
Telephone is the preferred way.
Oh, telephone. Okay,
and,
sorry. You
yes.
kind of glitched out there for a second. I've
okay.
also thought maybe just making a video about their product and a request that they be a sponsor, and then show that to them as a private video. You think that would be good?
Quite potentially. I don't have experience with that, so I wouldn't know how to answer that question. And Courtney, what's one of the big questions you have going into this?
Well, big question is, how do I get sponsors? My smaller question now after Brian's question is, can you think of any like job titles of people I should be looking for? Like when I call a company, I don't want to say, hey, can you hook me up with the person that gives your stuff away for free? Like, could you hook me up with your sponsorship coordinator? Or like, do you know who, like what these people are generally called?
No, it varies with every organization, because what you're going to find out is as you gain and garner more and more media attention or more social media value, then you're going to work with larger and larger corporations, and those titles are going to vary. This trek that I am on right now, the titles vary from CEO and president all the way down to a product sponsorship coordinator. I don't even know, maybe manager, maybe like marketing manager or
Right.
associate of some kind. But let me answer that question about how I get to the right person. When I make a phone call, and we'll cover some of this, I've already researched the organization quite in depth, and I found out as much as I can about it. Usually I know if I'm going to be going after the president or the CEO, or if I need to try a lower level, because based on the size of the organization. And a lot of times, even if you don't know, you're still going to call and talk to the receptionist, and you're going to, first thing out of the gates is, hi, my name is John Doe, and I'm looking to speak or handles your product sponsorships for your organization. Can you tell me who that is? And that's posturing is a big key point in this area, and that's where I always follow up every statement with a question. So just like I did there, I said, hi, my name is Wayne. Here's what I do. And can you tell me who handles this with your organization? Again, can you tell me who that is? And I usually leave it at that. And then they either answer, no, I can't tell you, or sure, it's the president, or it's the VP of marketing, or whatever that is. Or it's Betty, and you say, well, wait a minute, before you transfer me, can you tell me what her title is? And you get that out of the way, because it's always good to have that information going into the phone call, because you kind of know how to present what you're doing a little more effectively. Now, I put together some talking points here. Before you do anything at all, you need to build a media kit for yourself. And I mean that with everything that I say it as. You really need to have something that backs up what you're telling somebody on the telephone. As much as you can sell yourself on the telephone, and as much as you can make a really good connection with somebody on the telephone or via video if you wanted to, it still needs backed up with some hard data for them to kind of check off the list and get that out of the way. So I'm not going to go into how to build a media kit on this conversation, but if it's something that you all would like to have some advice on, I'm more than welcome to give advice in that area on another BLAB or video chat if you want to.
Cool.
So build a media kit, and when you're building the media kit, you're going to think about some things. You're going to have to know your marketplace position. So you're going to have to know how you want to present your positioning in the marketplace to the sponsor, the potential sponsor that you're talking to on the telephone. And you're going to want to know what you can do for that sponsor. So when that sponsor is talking to you, they're thinking, well, how's this going to benefit me? And so you really have to have that very clear in your mind, how that's going to benefit the sponsor. And that helps you set up the media kit. So all of these things start to come together when you're putting in, when you're building your media kit. And so you will really need to outline in that media kit how you will present the sponsor to the audience. So how is that sponsor going to become visible in the project or in your lifestyle or where you're doing with that sponsored item. And in my case, I just suggested that I am not going to do product reviews. It's not something that I like to do. I don't want to be put under pressure. And I feel that if you have a sponsored item, then a product review is automatically a biased product review, because it was given to you. So it doesn't matter how hard you try not to be biased, you're going to have a biased opinion about it. So I told them that on the telephone right away, that don't expect that from me unless I get a wild hair that says, I really like this product enough that I really should do a review about it. And I'll tell them all of this on the telephone once I've started to build that conversation over the first 4 minutes, 2 to 4 minutes of that phone call. So in my case, what I told them and promised them is I promise that you're going to be visible on video multiple times throughout this trip because of the nature of the project. I promise that it'll show up many times, but I can't guarantee you, because, for example, a product that I got sponsored was a repair kit. Well, how often am I going to need repairs? I don't know.
Right.
But I'll at least do a gear video stating that I had their product in my gear set. But I've had to use every product that was sponsored so far. So that's good. And so I believe that it's all in the expectation that you give that sponsor. And so I didn't promise a whole lot, but I'm hoping to deliver much, much more than I promised to the overall value of the products that they've sponsored to me. If that makes any sense. It's really
under
don't want to
promise, over
overpromise.
deliver. It's a good way of doing things.
Yeah. So that's kind of the points that I have for the three main steps to getting your product sponsored. And that is, first of all, build your media kit. And you have to have these thoughts in mind about the media kit. Number 2 is research the companies that you want to get sponsorships from. So for as far as research goes, you want it to line up with your moral and ethical values, right? I mean, you don't want to get sponsored. For example, I have a challenge with corporate America, and if that corporation is only doing things to increase their bottom line and to increase shareholder value, and they don't care about the environment, or they don't, then they're being harmful as an organization, then I'm not even going to consider them as an organization to be sponsored, to be a sponsor. Even if Ford walked up to me right now, or maybe that's not a good example. But yeah, it is. If Ford or GM walked up to me right now, I would say no way. I'm not interested in a product or financial sponsorship from you, because it's just not, your values just don't align with my values and my organization. So I really did a lot of research to find organizations that I thought were on the cutting edge of my value system, and really could serve a purpose in the project that I had. And so once I found that I had a list of about 100, I would say, one of the ways you can find those is to go find other people who are doing exactly what you want to do and figure out what their sponsors are and call their sponsors if it lines up with your values. And that's a good way of building a list quick. Secondly is to just research organizations, research their management, research maybe how they were started, and make a spreadsheet. And we had about 100 of them that I had built. And I started picking up the phone and calling every one of them. And when you're on the telephone with them, you don't want to back down with what you want from them. You just want to firmly stand your ground. You don't want to get something. You want to be open to taking more from a sponsor if that relationship develops, but you don't to you won't want to deal with every sponsor differently. You just want to build that solid. Here's what I do with a product, and
Right.
here's what to expect with it from every sponsor. And if you tell every sponsor the same thing, then you can always say that to them. Look, I tell every sponsor the same thing. I'm not going to do a product review, but what I'm willing to do is I'm willing to share every time that product is used in my project, and I'm willing to showcase the benefits. And you can even tell them this, and I did tell them this. I'm not, if your product really sucks, I'll tell somebody that if your product really sucks and something happens and it looks bad, I'm not going to do anything that would make you look bad for me having that product when it failed, but I will tell you about it. And then we'll decide how to go from there. So I try to put them at ease that way as well. And I usually want to close them on the idea that they're going to sponsor me in that first telephone call.
Yeah.
So
a question for you. I guess with sponsorship, they can either send you a product of theirs, which is very cheap for them to do, or in other cases, people actually get paying sponsors that actually pay cash to a project.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have product sponsors, or do you also have cash sponsors?
I just have product sponsors on this track.
Okay.
And then the cash is all through GoFundMe.
Okay.
But what I would say is that I don't have any advice when it comes to financial sponsorship. I just don't know it. I don't know it well enough. But I know that on point number one in the media kit, it's very important that it's outlined very detailed what they're going to gain from a monetary sponsorship as well. So it's even more important than building a strong media kit is even more important when there's monetary sponsorships. That's what I'm going to say. But product sponsorships, it's still important. And it's an evolutionary position to be in, because you really want to build that media kit. And then as you continue to get larger and larger sponsors, then you hone the media kit to accept other types of sponsorships, which would be financial. And so it's just that progression that it takes for you to learn the process. That's what I've had to go through.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I'm willing to help any of you guys and help anybody else jumpstart that. If we need to have another BLAB hangout or anything about making a media kit, I'm willing to do that as well.
And I'd like to do that. I'll schedule that with you, and we'll do that. That sounds like fun.
Okay. All right. And I definitely wouldn't say that I'm the best at that, because I know that the media kit that I have needs a lot of work, and it's something I've talked with some people about, and maybe I can get someone to give advice on it. So
cool.
I'd love to do that.
Of the 100 people or so you contacted, what was your rate of then having a relationship result?
Well, I wouldn't say I contacted all 100, and because some of them were redundant. It was backups for if the first one wasn't there, then if the first solar oven the company didn't want to work with me, then the second one in line maybe did. So I would say, but my rate of close is probably about 7, which is way higher than most people would ever tell you their closing ratio is.
So you flipped out just a little bit there. Was that 7%?
Oh yeah, I did glitch. 70%. So
70.
That's fantastic.
70.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
70. Yeah, it's really high. Most people would say 10% or 5 to 10% is a good ratio. I've been doing sales for a while, so that's kind of I've been working with executives and CEOs and presidents of major corporations for now, doing sales to them. So I kind of know how to speak, and I'm willing to do a whole hangout on that topic as well. we could go through a pretty good coaching session just on how to present yourself, if that's interesting. So yeah, cool. And then let me answer your question in just a second. So there's 3-step kit, 2 companies, and then 3, when you call them, tell a story. So just think about that in your mind. You want to tell a story. And that's really just the 3 steps. And then at that point, you've either sold it or you've not made that initial close, built the relationship. And but if you have, then you already can follow it up with an email with your media kit and all the additional information that you agreed to present them on the telephone. So, okay, now that's it. That's all I had.
And how many sponsors do you have now?
I want to say around 15 or so, 15 to 20.
And what was your social media presence like? Like, do you have 500 followers on Twitter or 5,000? Or like, what's your Facebook look like? You know?
Yeah, my Facebook is less than 500 maybe, or less than 800. I don't really know. Plus is over 5,000. It is 4,500 or so. Twitter is 1,800. Instagram is growing. It's over 400 now, 450 range. Cool. So not crazy good, but you know, in all honesty, when you make that phone call, when you have that initial, you know, you build that relationship just off the first 4 minutes of the conversation, really, you kind of have a good feeling about whether or not it's going to go or not. You really don't ever have a time to explain your following anyway. I think if you present yourself in the right way, that's just a backup to reinforce that you know what you're doing. If you present yourself in the right way.
Another question for you. When you put a product in a video, let's say you end up, I notice you have a water drinking straw thing or something, a water purifier.
Is it a life straw?
I don't know which one. But if you put that in a video, then do you email your contact at the company and say, hey, by the way, your product shows up in this video?
I have been trying to. I haven't every time, no. But when I did the video, like cooking with poop, I used the stove. I know, it was awesome, wasn't it? I used that cook stove, and I messaged Todd, the CEO of the company, and I said, hey, here's the video. It just showed up on YouTube. Thought you might want to know, and he sent it out to his social media. So I try to, yeah. And when I'm building the relationship with whoever the decision maker is, if it's a larger organization, like I have a sponsor, McNett Corporation, which owns 4 or 5 business entities that all became sponsors because there was just one product sponsorship individual for all entities. So what was I going to say? I don't know. It was
about reporting. Basically, what kind of reporting do you give back to the company?
Yeah.
To let them know what you're doing.
Yeah. When I was talking with the key decision maker there, they agreed to make the sponsorship deal, but then they wanted to send me to a social media contact within the organization that I would reach out to every time something would happen. So you're going to get a variation of everything from working with the CEO or with the business proprietor all the way to working with a little peon that sits in a booth for 10 hours a day, you know, maybe in India, right? That's the variation you're going to get. Maybe you might even get sent to a social media marketing firm that handles all the social media for ABC company. But I think the questions that we really want to cover and we want to make sure that we get over are things revolving around really how do you attain that? I mean, I know we've talked a lot about that already, but is there any questions that you have that are thinking, man, this just seems almost impossible, or does it seem reasonable? I've been doing sales for so long that at that level that it's hard for me to know what's reasonable in that area.
That seems completely reasonable to me. Because like with my own project, it'll be very visible. So I'll actually be able to point them to videos I've already done and say, your product will be showing up here. And so I want to make really sure that I tell them what the value they're going to get there is. And also, I'm only going to accept sponsors with really amazing, great products, since part of the goal of the entire project is to not use a lot of products, is to get really simple, to live really simple. So there's very few products I can really get behind. I would love to make a pitch to them. For example, Dr. Bronner's soap is one that I'm considering because it's a natural soap. I mean, it's you can brush your teeth with it. So there's no gray water problem. If the only soap we have on the property is a really ecological soap, and there's a bunch of other examples I could give. So I don't think it sounds undoable at all. I guess I just want to make sure I know what's in the mind of the person on the company's end and what kind of presentation they're expecting, because I'm not a professional. In fact, I'm very unprofessional. So I want to speak in a way that they can hear the value for them. Well,
see, that's all sales points, because you're different than the typical sponsorship that they line up with. So that's what you just did with me right there, is you told me a story, and it's the story that the sponsors they're going to set up in their seat when they hear you on the phone. You say, in fact, I'm not a professional. I'm very unprofessional. And here's why that's going to benefit you, right? Because it's not a polished production. It's not something that people are going to question the validity of your products in the end. They're going to see it being used in raw, real life, and they're going to see an unbiased opinion. And as a matter of fact, the whole reason I called you guys is because I freaking love your products. I mean, I've been using them for 2 years, or whatever, right? You can really enhance, but that's why I say telephone calls are so important, because you can tell a story and you can build that emotional connection with somebody to the point that they're just like, well, this dude is cool, or I'd really like to have our products involved with that person, because they obviously don't candy coat anything. That's almost the way I approach it. Mm-hmm. You have to, and you just approach it with 100% confidence that you are the best person for them to line up with. And you know what I mean?
Yes.
And if you approach it like that, then it all comes out in your voice, it's out in your confidence level, it comes out in your positioning. You don't have to, I use the word sales, you don't have to make it feel like a sales pitch, but it really to be a fairly well-honed story that you tell every time you call, a very similar story. And I'll tell you mine. I'll do a mock pitch right here that might help you guys kind of understand where I'm coming from. I'll say, hi, I'm going to be kind of quiet, but normally I bellow it out. I do. But
hi, I'm Wayne.
Right.
Okay, so I'm a guy with a cool product, like a biking or something. Call me up.
Yeah. I'll say, Brian, my name's Wayne Metter with A World for Change. Do you know who I am?
No. And thought I heard of you somewhere, but.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm a business owner like yourself. And our company is really focused on raising awareness about sustainability and about changing the way we look at our environment and the things around us. And as a matter of fact, the reason I'm calling you is because I'm getting ready to take a bike trek across North America and film a running documentary series that's going up on YouTube. I have a fairly large social media following, but really the purpose for my call is I love your company, I love your products, and I know you've worked really hard to build the company to where you are today. And
that's lovely.
Yeah, and I think this project really could line up to what at least what your website says your corporate values are. And yeah, I'm calling you because I'd really like to work with you as a product sponsor. Would you be interested in doing something like that?
Well, what are you looking for? What?
Well, you have X, Y, and Z products. I think are all really nice and they'd fit well in the project. But really, I only need X because I have to think about the weight I'm carrying, and so I think using product X would work really well. And the way I would showcase your products is I have a YouTube video series that will be a result of this, something that nobody's really done before, and I'll be taking the cameras with me every step of the way. Now, I don't do product reviews. That's not something I do because I can't be biased when it's a sponsored product. But what I will do is I'll do my best to showcase your product every chance I use it. I'll showcase that product on video, and it's going to naturally be used in the project. I mean, I only have so many products that I have with me. So it's going to naturally be used in the project. And I think it'd be a great opportunity for you to maybe reach a different market and showcase your products in a little different light.
Well, that sounds great, Wayne. Where can I send the X product to you? I'll ship it out tomorrow.
Yeah, right. So do you see kind of how I went at that?
That was great. Yeah, thank you for that. That was a really good idea.
Yeah, you bet. So if we want to, we can talk more about posture later in another hangout, but at least in this one, I think we ought to stick to sponsorships.
Cool. Okay, well, my expertise, if you can even call it that, is in crowdfunding rather than financial sponsorships. I do not contact corporations and say, hey, give me money. Although with these new skills that I've just learned from you, I might try doing that at some point. And I have just a few little points in my notes to talk about. One actually crossfades with what you were saying, which is, so there's actually a lot of crowdfunding opportunity, especially online right now.
Go back to what you just said. It crossfades into what you were saying and you glitched.
Research.
Okay.
Research your crowdfunding opportunities. So you've got Indiegogo, GoFundMe, Kickstarter, Patreon, and about 5,000 others that I don't even know about. So the first thing that I suggest doing is looking into those companies, and actually the value system can come into play there too. Like there was a story a couple of months ago about Indiegogo maintaining a crowdfunding campaign for somebody who had killed somebody else. And some people were really upset about that. And so GoFundMe, and I could be mistaken, it could be the opposite. It was either GoFundMe or Indiegogo. One was against having funds for things like that, and the other was not. And so that created a bit of a split, social justice-wise, about which platform people are going to use. So there's that element of researching. There's the element of, is this a project you're going to do no matter what? You're just asking for help? Or is this the project that you absolutely need a certain amount of money for in order for it to go at all? So that might inform whether or not you use something like Indiegogo or GoFundMe, which you get to keep whatever amount of money you make, whether you goal or not, versus Kickstarter, which has, in my experience, a little bit more clout, a little bit more staying power. It's been around for a while. People tend to know about it. But if you don't reach your goal, you don't get anything.
Right.
So if you're planning on doing something anyway, an Indiegogo campaign or some such might be a better option than Kickstarter.
Which is why I did GoFundMe for the trek.
See, cool. Yeah. I've actually never used GoFundMe or Indiegogo. I'm familiar with them. I haven't used them myself. I've used Kickstarter for 2 very specific projects that I would not have been able to do without a certain amount of funding. They were both relatively small. One was an art project, a visual art project, and another was a show, a music show that had like a lot of tech and stuff that I wasn't ever able to do before. And in my experience in Kickstarter, I realized that most of the platforms I had been familiar with were really focused on very specific projects that had like a life and a schedule and a certain outcome, like tangible outcome. And I actually had felt myself as an artist kind of limited in that. It's like I was trying to force myself to think up some kind of big project that was worthwhile, Kickstarter worthwhile, in order to get money to continue creating art. And then Patreon came along.
Yep.
And Patreon is like Kickstarter, except it's geared toward long-standing support on much smaller levels, like monthly support or continued support for everything. And as far as YouTubers and Patreon, from what I can tell, I've been on Patreon 2 years now. And from what I can tell, it's pretty specifically designed for people who make YouTube videos to be a channel that you send your following that you've already amassed through in order to support you. So the things that I've found that have been a little hindering with Patreon is that the infrastructure of the actual website is kind of designed to be a pass-through. You send a link, you have a little description, you go, hey, you guys, here's the monthly music video you know I already make, which is why you support me. There you go. It's not really meant for blogging. It's not really meant for posting galleries of pictures, things like that, which I had originally tried to use it for and found very frustrating until I kind of figured out that, you know, that's just not what it's for, right? It's also not a very good place to try to gain a following. It's a very good place to send people who already follow you. So if you're an artist and you think you're going to be able to start a Patreon and just have random people from the site pledge to you, I've had a little bit of that. Maybe about 5% of the people I have are just randos from Patreon that I have no idea, and it's really awesome to have them, but I didn't know them before. Yeah. Mostly what I have through all of my crowdfunding experience is people who are familiar with my work or are friends of mine or I already have a connection with that I have invited to join, to support me.
Okay.
So along with research goes experimentation, which I've already kind of talked about a little bit, right? Like I started with Kickstarter doing it a certain way. When Patreon came along, I was one of the first few hundred people to sign up. Originally, I started with having a support system where people paid per thing that I made.
Uh-huh.
In part because I wanted it to encourage me to produce more, right? Mm-hmm. So, hi, if you sign up, you give me $1, I'm going to make probably about 4 things a month. So figure that you'll be supporting me about $5 a month, which is very convoluted and it was hard to express to people. And it made sense to me when I started based off of what I wanted to use it for. But after about 6 months, I realized it didn't really make sense to do that. And so I changed the way I did it monthly. So one of the things that I would really encourage people to do when they're figuring out this crowdfunding thing and researching which platforms work for them, what fee structures work for them, and how to entice people into your support network is don't be afraid to experiment. And not everything that doesn't work the way you think it's going to work.
You glitched out right there. So number 1 is what?
Don't be afraid to experiment.
Experiment. Gotcha.
Yeah, so try something for 6 months. If it doesn't seem to be working, tweak it and try something else. Like it's a new frontier, right?
So in short form, you started out charging people a small donation per item or per video or per music video that you released, but you changed it to charging them to per month.
Correct. Yeah, those are the 2 options you have on Patreon. You either do per thing, per project or whatever, or people can sign up for a monthly subscription.
Gotcha.
And for me, that really works.
Okay, so how do you determine what you charge for a monthly subscription?
I don't determine that. My supporters determine that. They can offer anywhere between $1 to $50,000 if they want.
Yeah. And then she can also set up different reward levels. So if you're giving her $5 a month, then you get extra special content, for example.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and put my Patreon. Oh, he did. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if you look at my Patreon account at some point, if you don't want to leave the BLAB, you'll see that there are a few rewards there. $1, you get my gratitude, you get most of my Patreon posts, and like, hey, you're part of the community. That's super awesome. Thank you. At $5, I start getting into more sensitive material, like thoughts that I have about my art projects. There is a video of me killing a rooster for the first time for meat. That was something that my $5 people got to see, right?
Whether they want to do it or not.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
I wouldn't pay $100 for that.
Yeah. So the way that I structured my rewards is my 2 low rewards are here. You get most things and the art posts and everything. A little bit more, you get a little bit more of me. And more than that, you start getting like tangible physical perks. Like at $15 a month, you're entered into a random drawing that I do twice a year on my birthday and my unbirthday, which is halfway to my birthday, of a small piece of art of mine. So you can win free art. That's one thing. And I forget exactly how I have the rewards structured because sometimes I change them because I experiment. At some level, there's a quarterly, it used to be a Google Hangout, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be BLAB now. A Hangout where if there are few enough people at that level, then I'll offer one-on-one Hangouts if that's the way they want to do it, but also potentially group Hangouts. And at another level, it's basically like, hey, if I'm near your area, I'll stop by and I'll let you feed me your food or whatever. Like we can meet in person, I'll do a house show for you, whatever. So the reward levels for different types of creators on Patreon vary drastically. Like if you just poke around, people have gotten very creative. I kept mine really limited as far as little trinkets and things that I send to people, partially because I don't amass a lot of little material things. That's just part of my values, is not to have a lot of stuff. And also the cost and the effort involved. Like I would much rather give somebody something that I had to create anyway that normally people wouldn't be privy to than to have to create rewards specifically for a certain level, which I've noticed a lot of people on Kickstarter do. It's like you get a super special like thing that's going to cost another $1,000 to make, but we'll put that $1,000 into the overall budget and increase our goal in order to cover it. I can't really do that because I don't control the amount of cash flow that comes to me through Patreon.
Yeah. So you're saying that you've had to get people to move over to Patreon. And if I was to do that in some way, how might you recommend that I think about it? So for example, I could do a 2-part video series, say, that's a total of 30 minutes of video content. That's a tour through a permaculture farm. And I could put that on Patreon, but on YouTube, I could do a 2-minute preview and say, go. Yeah.
There's potential there. One thing that I really like about kind of the Patreon philosophy, they'll let you manage your content any way that you want to. They encourage you to keep most of your content public, and to have Patreon be a source for people who want to support you. And also that idea of there's an unlisted video on YouTube that your patrons see, because Patreon is not set up to host video on its own. Doesn't do that.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's one of my, I can't upload. I mean, you can attach it to a post, but then every single person has to download it and watch it on their computer. So it kind of doesn't really work. But what I tend to do is I'll upload unlisted videos, send to my patrons, and generally after a week or 3, if I'm comfortable with it, I will open up that video to the public, because part of what is good about doing that is that people get to see what you're doing more, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of the things that I keep patron only are like backstories for the songs on the album that I just released last Valentine's Day. Things like that, like stuff that you would share with your fans, your fan base, because essentially Patreon is a bit of a fan community that also financially supports you. Another thing that I would really encourage is be patient. I've been on Patreon for 2 years. I have 48 patrons. And I got most of those people by working to connect with people one-on-one, just like you got your sponsors. Mm-hmm. I connect with people who have supported my work in some way, or generally talk very favorably about what I'm doing with my life or what have you. And I contact them directly and I say, hey, what's up? Facebook's algorithm really sucks and you're not getting most of my posts, but if you sign up to Patreon, it's only $5 a month. It could even be $1 a month if you want. And not only does it actively directly help me, but you also get to see everything I post. I'm really leveraging that lately because Facebook is kind of leaving a lot to be desired in that area, especially for pages. And especially if you don't have a budget to pay Facebook to circulate your post, which I think is just a big crock of bullshit, and I won't do that.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
I've been very successful with that, and that takes, for a lot of people, that takes a lot of courage just to ask for support, especially on like a wide breadth like that. I'm not just contacting a CEO about a very specific thing. I'm contacting lots of people over the course of 2 years for little bits of their money, right?
But if you believe in what you're doing, it's not hard. I mean, it is, but it's not, because you want that to be, you want your art to be able to live, and your art can't live if you can't feed yourself.
Exactly.
So, you know what I mean?
So, and it's also, it's a feedbacking loop within itself. Once you get a little bit of sponsorship and you start interacting with your fan community, then you start getting motivated to do it more and more comfortable with it. The thing that I notice the most with artists and, basically artists mostly, is that they have like a big block about asking for money. And part of that is cultural. Part of that is, well, wait, you're an artist, which means you actually enjoy your job. So shouldn't that be enough? Why do you have to get paid for your work? Like, I hear it time and time again, both in my own experiences and in other people's experiences. And so like pushing through that. And this is one of these interesting things where we come from very, very different backgrounds. So I come from the, I'm supposed to embrace poverty. I'm supposed to feel like that is like I'm saving the world by being poor and working on a shoestring and having no budget for any of my projects because I'm an artist and I love what I do. And it took me a long time and a lot of experimentation and work to get over that mindset and to just shed that crap to be able to be like, nah, man, what I'm doing is worthwhile and it's worth money. And if you would like to support that, that's awesome. And if you can't, that's awesome too. And I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yep, that's exactly right. But with that attitude, that mentality, if that's the mentality you have when you call for product sponsorships,
it won't happen.
Yeah. Well, no. Yeah, the sponsorship will happen. Like, that's kind of the way you should portray yourself to somebody.
Oh, the way
right?
I just did, rather than the way I was just talking about.
Yeah, the way you just did, because you're coming at them and saying, look, I know that what I do is valuable. Like, there's just no question. So you can either sponsor me or not, but it's going to look really good if you do.
Yeah,
it'll be good for your.
Another interesting element to the sponsorship conversation, whether it's a product sponsorship or a financial sponsorship, is really being honest with yourself about whether or not you're ready for it. Like whether or not you really feel like what you're doing is worthwhile, and whether or not rejection is going to completely tear you apart, like whether maybe you need to do like some other work in other areas before you're ready to start calling people and asking them to support you.
Yeah, that's right. I agree with that very much. Any other questions, Brian?
I think that does it for me. Right now I'm getting set up to, I've been keeping links of products that I like for like 2 years. I've been making a list. So I think, I need to do exactly what you're talking about, set up the media kit, and then start making videos, which we begun to do. And then also put myself on Patreon. So I'm going to experiment, like Courtney's saying, and try a few things out and see how to survive.
Yeah, I'm going to have to try Patreon as well. I just don't know how to mix it into my YouTube without making it without making it so much extra work, I guess.
Yeah, it is extra work. And that is one thing that's actually the one point that I hadn't gotten to yet, is that it's, I mean, for me, my Patreon's my job. Like that's how I'm surviving. And it is work. It's effort to keep in touch with the people who are already supporting you and making sure that they're getting enough content, but not too much content, right? It's effort to connect with people and say, hey, would you like, I've noticed that for the last year and a half, you've been a staunch supporter of my work and you share my links and you really support this project. I'm wondering if you'd like to join my Patreon. Ta-da! But then it's also another administrative maintenance kind of thing. I actually just had a conversation with a fellow artist last night, and we were talking about Patreon. One of the things that is kind of interesting about Patreon right now is the amount of money that it says you're making on your creator page is not the amount of money that you get. It doesn't include the fees. There's I think it's 5% the Patreon takes, which is really reasonable for the platform that they provide and the network and everything. I have absolutely no problem paying them that. And then there's the fees for shifting the money around, which is another 5%. So you've got a 10% slice off of that already. And then your sponsors have the ability to hold payments for a month. If something goes down and they can't afford that $5, they have a lot of control over how much they can pay you. Sometimes cards get declined. Almost every month, at least one card gets declined. And so I was talking to this friend and she was like, so what is your percentage of like what you're actually seeing every month from your patrons? And I say, well, right now it's about 95%. I'm getting most of the pledges that are being pledged to me. And she was like, wow, like I'm lucky if I get 50. And we talked about it a little bit. Wow. And the main difference is that after somebody's declined for a second month, I contact them and I say, hey, I'm so thankful for the sponsorship and the support that you've already given me. I really appreciate it. I noticed that the last 2 months now, your card's been declined. I'm just wondering if you'd like me to remove you from Patreon now? Is there, or, whatever. I'm generally more like, I'm better at that in writing than I am on video right now. But I just check in with them and make sure that they're still in a position to continue sponsoring me. And most of the time they say, oh my God, I didn't even see the email. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. And they go fix their expired credit card or whatever. And that's a major way how I've continued to receive the sponsorship that's been pledged to me. So yeah, I mean, it's a little extra work, and it's definitely much more work in the very beginning when you're figuring out the slightly wonky website and really excited and motivated to get people to join you. But at this point, I update my Patreon a couple times a week. Usually it's links to stuff that's already up. I make sure to add my Patreon link to every YouTube video I post. It's just another link to post, right? And I try as much as I can to funnel as much of my artwork and as much of my updates through the Patreon link as possible. So I'll upload a video, I'll post it to my patrons. If it's public, I share from my Patreon. So just the traffic gets moved through Patreon and people see, oh, she's on Patreon. Awesome. I'm going to give her money. I can't even tell you how many artists I've been like, you know what? You need to get on Patreon so I can give you $1 a month. And I do. So
I got you.
yeah, it is a little bit more overhead.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Well,
unavoidable. It's not passive
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, it's just something that I've got to think about, you know, and I've been just dragging my feet on the whole platform because I didn't want to have to learn something else. But yeah.
Yeah,
But, yeah.
the learning curve isn't particularly steep. I mean, in my opinion, if you're familiar with the internet, it's not particularly steep. They're pretty transparent as far as the company goes. I really like the people who are involved. They align with my values. In fact, I just went through a process of considering an actually passive income generator, which was to potentially become an affiliate on Amazon, so that the products that I'm using, I could post links to. And
Right.
you know, I thought about it for like a day and was like, I don't like what Amazon's doing to the world. I don't want to be associated with them in that way. And you know, the whopping $20 a year or something that I would make off of that, it was not worth it. I would feel really, really gross if I did that.
Yeah.
So
I, on the other hand, am planning to set myself up with the Amazon affiliate program, plug the products I think are great. So we differ on that one. I'm going to go for it all the way, and I'm going to review the books I like and the products and try and sell some of them.
Amazon is a really, really great place to post reviews. And I'm with you, Wayne. I don't really want to be doing product reviews either. I had one experience with that. A camera bag company contacted me after I posted a blog ranting about how bags fall off my shoulders. And they had some kind of cool plastic thing. They're like, yeah. And I'm like, you realize that I'm like going to use this bag for like groceries and shit, right? Like, so this company sent me a camera bag because they wanted me to review it. And I warned them that I was going to be honest and that I wasn't going to be using it as a camera bag. And they weren't very happy with my review, you know? And I was just like, yeah, I don't think I really need to do it. I still use that camera bag now for an actual camera. It's kind of a fun story. But like the idea that, I mean, I don't really think that product reviews, if they come from sponsorship, I don't trust them. But Brian's going to be doing it the opposite way. Like, he's got a camera here that he just loves. He's been using it since I got here. And he really wants to do a review of it in order for them to potentially sponsor him. And that's totally, that would be something that I could potentially get behind.
Absolutely amazing camera. It's a Canon Vixia Mini X. It's totally unlike all of their cameras. And we've been passing it back and forth. The video of us going to town, that is on my Bosque Village YouTube account, was made with this. We were just passing it back and forth. So I'd say something, and then I'd pass it to her, and she, you know, it was just really great.
So it feels natural.
One. It's waiting for me in Austin. I do not have the resources to buy things like this, but I've been using it since I got here, and I was like, you know, I really just kind of need one of these. I live in a van. I need a wide angle lens, and this thing is amazing. So.
Yeah. Well, I've already sold one, except that I didn't have an affiliate link for it, so I didn't get anything out of it. She got the white one too. I didn't know there was a white one.
There's a white one. Yeah. Works less. You should get the white one.
I hear you. Well, I have a Amazon affiliate account, and I've used it in the past, but you make so little on it that I've even quit using it. Like it's just been. It's so it's just not worth it.
It's not worth your soul, Wayne. It's your soul.
Yeah, I know.
I already sold my soul. I was just getting in the way.
That's pretty good.
I'm really looking forward to doing this media kit BLAB with you. I think that'll be a lot of fun, and I'll learn a lot of cool stuff.
Okay, cool. And I'm getting ready to end the recording, but if anybody would like to know more about you, I will put links below in the YouTube description once I upload this to YouTube. And so if you would, make sure you send me any information you want me to include in that description. And then,
Thanks.
also, anybody who's watching on YouTube, make sure that you put in the comments below if you want us to do other blabs focused around these types of topics, or if you want me to host them, and maybe you want to hear Brian's story as well. So I know Brian's got a pretty neat story of his permaculture village, or that he's working on. So I'd love to share any of that with the YouTube audience if they want to hear it, and they'll let us know in the comments.
Yeah, and Wayne, thanks a lot for your time and your insights on this kind of stuff. I'm ignorant to it, so you've really kind of enlightened me a bit. And thank you, Courtney. We could talk anytime, I guess, but it's nice to share that with people.
Awesome.
That's
Thank you,
awesome.
Wayne. I'm so glad that I asked you and that you suggested this. This is really great.
Cool. I'm glad it's all worked out. So talk to the audience all soon.